You literally have an unlimited budget to hire any individual, living or not living, to work for you.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast, where we look to crack the code on growing your business by tackling the challenges that keep revenue leaders up at night. I'm Carl Ortmans, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about something that is very topical and also a little bit confusing: AI and revenue. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by the great team at Virtual Causeway. Imagine your sales team spending less time chasing and more time closing because buyers already know your name before that first call. That's exactly what Virtual Causeway does. They help B2B companies get found earlier in the buying process by the right people through the right channels that actually influence decisions today. What's the result? Well, fewer cold calls, better conversations, and pipeline that moves faster. You can visit them at virtualcauseway.com, and don't forget to mention the show for a special rate. Now, my guest today is my good friend, Chris Fossenier, the Chief Growth Officer at Member Solutions. Chris started his career as a network engineer in Cleveland, where he became chief engineer within 9 months and then became a partner. He then moved back to Canada and spent nearly 20 years running Rocket Inbound, an IT and digital agency he founded and built from scratch in Saskatchewan, more specifically, Saskatoon. In 2013, he founded Social Spiral on the side. It's a loyalty and reviews platform built on SMS, and he ran that for a decade. And this is also where I got to meet Chris, and I'll say share some opinions with him. Impressively, he had under a 2% annual churn and decided to shut it down on purpose in 2024 when he was ready to move on. From there, he joined Vendasta, one of Canada's largest tech companies, as the head of special projects for an 800-person company. It was here that the executive team chose him as their corporate AI champion. Not the CTO, not a developer, the operator who spent decades figuring out how to make technology actually work for small businesses. And today, he's focused on two major things at Member Solutions: growth and AI. And in my view, this is what makes it worth listening to the topic, because it's simple. He's never just talked about adoption, he's actually driven it. And if you follow him on LinkedIn, you'll know he's on the water every morning. Kayak first, then work. And sometimes it's kayaking to work. Chris, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for joining us.
Morning, Carl. Thanks for having me.
So let's get kicked off. And if you can tell everybody or share with the world a little bit about your world. What industries, verticals do you work with? What are the selling motions? What size companies do you work with?
Sure. So Member Solutions, not unlike a lot of companies within the Jonas constellation sphere, are fairly niche. So we deal with membership software, mainly martial arts, but we have gun ranges, Botox clinics. And the interesting thing about this company, which really I found very intriguing when I came on board, it's been around for over 25 years. So, and some of the customers have been around for that long as well. So not a large company, revenue wise, right around 6 million. And our net revenue is, there's kind of a mandate of 30%. That's the bar that you're held to. So we're dealing with SMBs, really is what we're dealing with. And we're helping them solve a problem in the membership space. Those companies that I mentioned, that's how they drive their revenue. And we have a special arm that helps them with invoicing and collecting those delinquent payments. So that's where we focus on Member Solutions. And within our greater group, we have related companies. We have a website company that caters to the same type of businesses. And then we have a facility management company that is more specific on recreation facilities.
So not a lot of things to help one group do all the things.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're covering all angles for those SMBs to make sure that they're able to run their business.
Yeah. And the SMBs would be a membership type focused business. Yeah.
Nice. So how we got today's topic of AI is I asked Chris, just like I ask everybody, what's a successful revenue initiative you've led or an existing challenge you're solving or have solved? Well, it didn't take us long to know that we had to talk about AI, and more specifically, AI tooling for revenue impact. So let's kick off here. Chris, most teams are adopting AI right now. I think that's a fair assessment across what's happening.
Yeah.
What I'm also seeing is that this means that we have to change our workflows or our behaviors on how we operate. So, from your perspective, what does real integration actually look like, and how have you helped teams change behaviors?
So that's a great question. And real integration, often people think it's like adding a tool to the toolbox, maybe taking a Udemy or something on how to use AI. But it's actually patience is probably the most important thing. Unless you're on, even if you're on an R&D team, there's still a learning curve. There's still an adoption curve. I think we're almost past the belief curve, but in 2023, that was a big challenge. Just people believing that it was even real. They thought it was great for like writing maybe a limerick or something like that, but they didn't think it was going to really help them in sales or something. So with our team, what we do is it's just working with the team one-on-one, very specific in what they do. So in our revenue engine, our team goes right from the marketing aspect where you're generating leads and creating content to your sales demos. And then there's an implementation phase. And then you have your account management phase where you try and maintain customer happiness for, as I mentioned, 25 years with your customers. So each stage has a very specific use for AI. It's not the same tool across, although you would be using some of the same tooling. So what I've found is the approach is a very hands-on approach. So I'm lucky that I came from a technical background. So I understand some of the more technical aspects of AI, but I've also worked with SMBs and individuals who are non-technical. You mentioned I was in Cleveland, so there I was working with very technical networks back when people had servers in their offices, and I was dealing with accountants and hedge funds, and those people, although intelligent, they didn't work with technology. So just being able to communicate that. So the cadence that we have is I will sit down for an hour session with my team, and I've done this for a few quarters now, and really focus in on a problem they're trying to solve. I'll give you a specific example. Mary Margaret is my content writer, and it took me a while to get her on board because she was on mat leave, but I had worked with her before, and she's fantastic, but she's not tech savvy. It took us almost 2 quarters to get her really ramped up on AI. She just told me, we were at a Cancun offsite for my team just recently. And at that offsite, she presented her content engine that she's created. And she had all of Q2 content done about 2 weeks into Q2. And now
Wow.
she has the ability and the time to work on Q3, side projects, enrich that content. And that wouldn't have happened without spending the time with her, and obviously her having the interest in embracing AI. So I believe that the most important thing is that either you or you get someone that has the ability to really dig into the problems and move beyond things like prompting or just using. You might see a tool like Lovable or something like that, where people will go on and they'll create something, but they don't actually use it. The true test is if you've done something in AI and you actually use it every day to accomplish what you're trying to do in your job, and the people on my team are involved in that revenue engine.
How did you get your content writer to jump on board? Because there's a lot of noise on LinkedIn, I'll say it this way, and sort of in the market. Oh, AI is going to replace people. I don't need them, etc. But the challenge statement really comes, there's still a challenge statement of, the creativity and the thinking and how we're going to do this and where's it going to go and et cetera, et cetera. When you brought this to your content writer, what was the conversation, or how did that conversation go to say, hey, really want you to start to invest in AI and use this because it'll help you to maximize your output to work on other higher value tasks? Or what did that conversation sound like for her to go, or that person, sorry, I don't want to say it's her, but that person to just go, oh, okay, I'm in, I'll figure this out with you?
Yeah. So in this case, Mary Margaret is a her. And the conversation, so she's always been passionate about content and creating content. So that was an advantage. That's one of the reasons I hired her, is she just loves to create content. And I saw that she had the ability to create massive amounts of quality content without using AI. So the other thing that helped when I brought her on board, my entire team, I give them a lot of autonomy. I say, this is the goal we need to hit. It might be a number. It's a metric of some sort. We use OKRs. I don't overly care how you get there, as long as we're on brand, we're professional, and we get there. That's all I want to see. And so I explained to Mary Margaret that the way that she's going to get there more quickly is with the use of AI. I had already set up a toolbox for her of some common tools for video content. But I said, it's, you're in charge here. You're going to use these to shape whatever you want to do. And so initially it was just some tools. We use tools like Vizard for video, Gamma for content creation. And then I moved beyond that to a more in-depth stack where actually every single one of my employees, even a content writer, works out of Visual Studio Code using Claude code. And she built a team of agents. So another thing I tell my team is that you literally have an unlimited budget to hire any individual, living or not living, to work for you. And I show them how to do that. And her content engine that she created, which is a team of agents that she communicates with, she basically acts as the final editor, because having a human touch to her content is very important to her and also to me. But when she presented at our offsite, we had a few CEOs from within the organization, and she was asked to present organization wide on her content engine, and they want to leverage that at other business units. So by empowering people with a goal, and listening closely to the problem they're trying to solve, not just slapping a piece of software on and say use this, you can get some pretty amazing results. And she's, from this agentic team that she's built, she's going to build another team, very specific, and she's even gotten to the point where she hooks directly into the different tools via API. And she's not a programmer. It's clear for people listening here that I still get calls from her about not being able to log into a piece of software. So she's not real technical, but she's solved a very technical problem. But helping people understand that you can literally talk to AI in a conversation these days, and you can get a very technical result. The goal isn't the technical result; it's what the technical result can do for you. And I might have already mentioned it, but she's created her Q2 content in about 2 weeks. And now she can just refine, she can add layers to it, she can host events. It just frees up. She's basically doing the work of a 5 to 8 person marketing team right now.
That is awesome. The one thing you said I do like is that there still needs to be a human in the loop. One of the things that I've talked a lot about is that AI sandwich. The human tells the AI what to do, and then the human validates whether the AI did it correctly or not. I think there's an importance thing there. And actually, just kind of a sidebar, because I've got a couple of questions. As you said this, I took this AI in GTM course through Pavilion, and one of my team members, I'll say team members because we were part of the same cohort, he said, "Oh, our CEO brought in OpenClaw and gave it full read-write access to everything."
Yeah.
And he's a revenue operations person. Yeah. And so he said they launched it, it went on. He was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And then it was changing banners and headlines and all these things on the website. And it was just constantly updating, iterating. Yeah. And he got questioned, like, what happened? Why is this happening? He's like, I have no idea. Like, I don't know. There's no logs. There's no, this is what we did. Here's what we changed. He's like, I have no idea what it's doing or what. So he was quite literally pulling his hair out because it's doing too much. It's too much too fast. And there is a little bit of, I think, concern. I'll say it that way. Concern that what I'm hearing with others is like, oh, we went from no AI to full AI, or we're trying to learn so fast. And there is that there's the element of, this tooling dropped in our laps all at the same time. Everybody's learning it together. It's iterating at a pace that we've never seen in terms of technology, in my opinion. Yeah. So there's two questions. There's one question that I think I want to ask you about. Mary, would you say Mary Lou? Was it?
Mary Margaret.
Mary Margaret. Sorry, Mary Margaret. So the question's how? Like, how did she learn and how did she change her skill set to do all the things she's doing? Because building a team of agents is not super simple, but there's lots of resources out there now. So how did you enable her to do those things so she can create such a great output?
Yeah, so this works. I found that this works with anyone who is interested in their job and in their career. So everyone has a problem they're trying to solve. They probably have 10. So in those initial sessions, I quite literally just, when I'm sitting down with the person, I'm like, what if you could change one thing, what would it be? And we pick that. And sometimes when I meet with people, they have a hard time coming up with an idea specifically to their role. And I'm like, well, it can be anything. It can be, it can be a stock picker, it can be, your fantasy football app or something like that. But the key is to create a paradigm shift in that session, because this is the paradigm shift that happens. People are comfortable with AI in the sense that they write prompts, they do a couple things like that. They maybe use Perplexity, and but then they hear about these things other people are doing. Well, I can never do that. Like that's the other folks doing that. I'll just stick with my prompting and whatnot. So in this half hour to an hour session, I can demonstrate to them like you can literally do anything. The way it's more of a pattern, teaching them a pattern of how to use AI, just kind of almost like scientific method. And then when that light goes off, that's where you have them. Then they're, oh, okay, I get it now. And I reassure them, like, you're not going to break anything. We're not, like, whatever you build, we're not going to hook directly, like you said, up to production, or you're not going to hook it right up to the website. We can sandbox this stuff, but play around with it, get creative. I have show and tells with my team when they create stuff. We meet every week, specifically with my team, and we also meet with the R&D team, and I encourage show and tells there. So that's really how you do it. You get a paradigm shift, you get them excited, and you give them ownership of what they're creating. And because they're a professional and they know that they have to do their job, they're creating things that are just making them more productive. And I also encourage all my teammates to create a portfolio, like on a regular basis, add to your portfolio of what you've created, whether it's AI or not, because although I'd like you to stay on my team forever, it's important to do that. So just that genuine assistance to help them develop their career, and whether it's AI or not, they're going to buy into it. And with AI, it's just a lot. It's just very exciting right now. So the buy-in, if you put in the effort, happens.
I've seen a couple of memes, and I think they're quite funny. But it's like, wait until the CFO sees their token budget compared to the headcount budget that they had before, right? Like on that sort of parallel of the amount of work that's being done. So when you've sort of helped to enable your team, where do you have them start? Do you say pick a problem statement? So as you said, the content, and I can't remember who said it to me on the podcast, but anyways, they said attach yourself to an invoice. And the notion there is see all the steps and all the things you have to do on going through from I created an invoice to getting paid, and what are all the steps to see what the things are that you can either maximize or you optimize or remove. Right. And so I'm sort of using that as a parallel for this of, do you have somebody sort of attach themselves to an invoice, take the problem or take the situation, walk it all the way through to the very end and say, okay, what are the things that you really don't need your full focus so you can do a higher value tasks while it's doing these things? Because you know what, it's pretty standard. Like, do you use an analogy like that, or how did you get them to see the problem statement for the outcome? You talked about the outcome and working your way backwards. So how do you enable that whole process?
Well, it really ties into that. My method anyway is more of a one-on-one, and then you get to the point where you'll have a couple kind of champions on your team, and then they can help you with that one-on-one. So you turn your one-on-one to a 2-on-2 and a 3-on-3 kind of thing. But probably the key is just hiring the right people. If you hire the right people, then they're going to get it. Like, they're going to understand, like, this is just the next tool. This is the next internet. This is just something that I'm going to embrace. It just makes sense. So we do have that mantra. We don't believe that AI is more important than people, but we do believe that AI is important to get the job done. And we take pride in the work that we do. We've been told that our team is, a couple notches above other teams, so that competitiveness is kind of fun too. If you have people on your team that are competitive, so I think it's more about the people. The method that I use is solving a problem for them, and once they see that they can easily solve a problem and they have the pattern in hand on how to do it, then they can solve any problem really that they're faced with. Because in revenue, the problems have been solved time and time again. The landscape changes, so now you have to solve them in a different way. So we're not trying to get to Mars or anything. So the problems aren't crazy to solve. So they realize that once they have this tool and this pattern in place, then there's really nothing that they can't do. And yeah, eliminating those simple tasks is often one of the first things that they get rid of, like Avery in sales, cleaning up his pipeline, eliminating leads that are probably less worthwhile than other leads, maybe putting those onto some sort of an autonomous AI-driven campaign, diving into the data. That's a really big chunk. That's a whole conversation on its own, I think. But one of the things we've done for our team, this also gets them excited, is we have a bunch of sources of data. And in the past, you had to ask R&D, hey, could you query the database and see if we have this information? I have it set up now using MCPs, so they can just ask in English what the numbers from any data source that we have. So they can go across data sources. Hey, could you check in our old database versus our new database on the client that has this client number to show me some revenue information? And it'll do those SQL queries and pull all that information back. So giving them data access and empowering them like that is they just come up with a bunch of cool things. And at the offsite, they were in their presentations, I gave them some guidelines, but when they were presenting, I saw a bunch of things that I hadn't seen yet. So they literally had created new things I hadn't seen yet in about a 3-week period of time. So it makes your team move fast and gets them excited about what they're doing.
There's a governance question that's underneath of this.
Yeah.
That I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask. Like, how do you start them? Because if you're giving access to all the system data, what's the level of security or what's the level of governance that you say, here are the guidelines you can operate in, you can kind of build anything, go ahead. And then do they have to come to you with like a proof of concept to say, hey, Chris, I just built this thing, whatever the thing is, and it's helping me do X, Y, and Z, and I'm able to do a little bit faster. And is that how you take that? I don't know if it's like an internal sort of jam session or an internal competition to create something to make their lives better, to scale. Like, how does that process happen inside of your team?
So I think there were 2 questions there. There was the data governance piece, and then kind of the process to create something.
Yeah.
So on the data governance side, my rule of thumb, because I come back from a technology background, is read-only access. And then they only have access to whatever our R&D team has allowed us to have access to. So we don't create the logins and things for these databases that have, could possibly have sensitive information. So we have a DevOps team, an R&D team. They give us read-only access to the things that we can see. And so the MCPs that I create for my team can only see that information as well. And it's also just within our own secure VPN network. So none of this is exposed publicly. Now they could take that information, they could anonymize it for maybe some sort of presentation they might do on a sales call or something like that. So the security side, we just follow the best practices and the mandate from our R&D team. And I highly recommend that all companies do that. You definitely don't turn on Claude and ignore all, prompts mode. There's kind of a God mode you can turn on in Claude. Some people turn that on because they don't want to keep hitting yes to the, am I allowed to do this? Am I allowed to do that? I recommend not turning that off. And then the process for The creativity is we do the one-on-one sessions, we do group sessions. I encourage team sessions where it might be a one-on-one between team members. Someone's a little bit better in one area. I have this individual, Isaac. He's really good with technology in general, and he's done a lot of work on some agent building, so he can help people with that. He's also very good at just configuring your machine to use MCPs. And once you've done it a couple of times, it's not rocket science, but it is a learning curve. So yeah, just the one-on-one type stuff, more so than, watch this video or read this blog. I believe in a hands-on approach, because then you can dynamically change the meeting according to whatever questions people might have.
Once I create a thing
Yeah.
and I tell you, hey, Chris, if I'm on your team as the example, I say, hey, Chris, I just created a thing. It's making me do X better. Is there a point where you look at it and say, okay, is there a business case effectively that you almost ask from me? Would you say, okay, Carl, great, I love it. You need to tell me, what is it saving? How are you doing something different? Has it created you more opportunities or saved you more money or whatever the case is? Like, how are you looking at that to say, okay, I see how it'll impact revenue, so that we can actually have others do this and do, either have a higher output, save more revenue, make more money, save more time, whatever that metric is. But how are you thinking about this?
Yeah. So the mechanism I use for that is outside of AI. It's just using OKRs. So objectives and key results. Measure What Matters is a book by John Doerr. It's kind of a system that was built by Andy Grove at Intel. Pretty common system.
Mhm.
And so everyone has their objectives and key results. And if what they're working on doesn't feed into those, I just say don't do it. Like, if you want to do something for fun, that's fine. I don't mind that. But you wouldn't spend a bunch of time on anything that doesn't feed into your OKRs. And if you use that if you have some sort of system like that to govern decision making, it kind of just self heals, takes care of itself.
Mhm.
Another test outside of OKRs is if you don't use it, then you probably shouldn't build it. Like, if you're not going to use it on a regular basis to do something. So Mary Margaret's content agents, she uses those every quarter, and probably throughout the entire quarter on specific things as special content projects come up. We've built this thing called Weekly Ops for the team, where it ties into your OKRs, and you literally just talk to, in the Claude app, or if you use Visual Studio Code, you tell it about what you're doing. It goes through your calendar, your email, your team. We're a Microsoft shop. It goes through your team's chats, and it helps you compile your weekly update every week. And so a weekly update that might have taken you an hour now takes you a minute to kind of put together, because all of your notes and your OKR results are in there. You do your weekly update. It says, hey, these are your OKRs. It looks like these things kind of move the needle on a couple. Is that true? And then, so building tools that you use is a really good way to measure it. Building something fun is fine. But OKRs and usability are the ones that keeps everything on the rails.
Yeah, that makes that makes a lot of sense, and it is really interesting that you can do all this now. So you talked a little bit about also giving like that. I don't know if it's read write access to. Is it Claude?
Read only.
Read only.
Yeah.
Are you using Claude or Claude? However, Anthropic.
Yeah.
You're using Anthropic internally then?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
the main tool that we use. There are some other AI tools, but as far as the main LLM that we use, it's Anthropic's Claude. And my team, not everyone is 100% in Visual Studio Code yet, but by the end of Q2 they will be for the core of the things that they do. And it's a little bit of a learning curve, but there's a lot of advantages to doing that. Eventually there's going to be some new tools in AI for basic workflow and collaboration, like the Office suite used to be. It'll be a completely AI powered and integrated system. Google's kind of making some headway in this. It's not quite there yet, but I often think of it as, and we do build these strategic brains within Claude, where if you think of it like this call we're having right now, if this was a meeting, that would go into the brain. You would do your weekly updates into the brain, and then anyone on the team could just ask our brain, we call it the CXSM brain, is, what is Chris working on this week? Boom, it comes up, and then it's like, oh, okay, how could that help what I'm working on? And then it would say these things, and you can avoid having meetings, unnecessary meetings, collaboration. You can avoid the creation of 5 documents that are saying the exact same thing, but just slightly formatted differently because someone likes different formatting or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot of advantages of it.
So the whole company, or your team, I guess, the Claude is talking to the different tools to be able to pull those things together.
Mhm.
And the goal there, it sounds like, is to remove that administration work of, let me write out my update, let me go back to my OKRs and create progress reports. Who's the one that governs that? Like, is it you? Is it somebody on your team who actually goes and looks at all the systems and processes that you put in place with the AI and go, yeah, it's still on point, or no, something broke, I've got to reformat either the visual code, or I've got to refactor the prompt? Who's looking at that from your side?
So the things like that, where people are interacting on a daily basis, I find are self-healing, because the individuals on the team would notice right away if something's not right. And then as far as repairing it, I have all of my repositories, like a repository on GitHub where you keep the code kind of thing. We use 2 different GitHub and ADO, but the for certain repositories, I just give people access to update it, because it's not a big deal. You can, if something goes wrong, you can roll it back, and the tools that we're using are pretty much within a team. Now, if you were to expand something like this through an organization with thousands of people, that's a whole different thing. And that problem will be solved. That's just not going to be solved by my team. So we build tools that are good for our team, and I encourage my team to improve them, to identify issues with them. But the most of the things that we're solving are fairly simple. It's just that they create cognitive load if you have to do them manually. And I want to remove that cognitive load, because I want to use your cognitive brain power to do other things that you could never get to because you had these admin things. So in doing so, then that gives our team an advantage over other teams, because if they're not doing it, they're spending their cognitive load on those weekly updates and the admin things that you kind of have to do to keep on track.
I like that cognitive load. What are the things that are occupying your time that
Yeah.
you can remove? I really like you said that. The other thing that I don't know that I've asked you, but we've sort of danced around this with all of these updates, and when your team's starting to build things and et cetera, and they're bringing it to light, how many of those things actually go across the team where the adoption is full team, or do some of them stay just within that one person? Because the underlying question is, when you build all of these things, how does that change your systems and processes on the way that your team is operating?
Yeah, so it would be probably the majority of them would be individual specific, because their roles are unique. Um, One thing, and we're already seeing it, is that as a result of this, instead of having 5 people on a team, you're going to have one, because that one person is running up effectively a 6-person team with AI agents. Um, there are some that go across the entire team, and I think that that's fine. Some people get worried that, well, there's going to be all this stuff, and we can't keep track of it, and like who knows what's going on. But that's no different than when everything was kept in a sheet or an Excel spreadsheet or a doc. Um, since the beginning of time, when there was teams working together, there would be a meeting. They would discuss something in the meeting. The notes would be in a Word document, but 3 other people would be like, you know what, like that meeting, those meeting notes were okay, but I can make those meeting notes better. And then they would put it in another document. And pretty soon, you get an 800-person company, and they're operating out of 5 spreadsheets that are, people think they're all the main spreadsheet. Like there's 5 pockets of people that think this one spreadsheet is the right one when it actually isn't. And so it's always been a challenge. I think AI will help rein that in a little bit, but I'm fine with individuals having their own tool set. It's not unlike a professional hockey team in the NHL, they certainly follow a system, and there's a game plan, but individuals have their own tools, and it just makes the team better. Like McDavid, he certainly got a different toolkit than the Makar, right? But both of them are doing phenomenal things on the ice. So I look at it that way. There obviously is responsibility within the team to properly document. So as an example, using a tool like GitHub. So if you create a tool, it's very easy, especially with AI, to make sure that GitHub repository is very well documented so that anyone could walk into it, clone it down to their machine if you were to give access to them, and they could figure out how to use it, and they could get it up and running with the help of AI. So I think it is, if you put structure in place to make sure that things aren't getting unruly, and if you also have that check metric of it should feed into your OKRs, and if you're not using it, kill it. It's kind of a self-cleaning ecosystem.
That's awesome. If I just looked at the time and I said I'd get you out of here in a reasonable amount of time, but if I ask you this question, if a sales or marketing, if a sales or marketing team needed to build an AI stack from scratch, and it sounds like that's what you've done, is effectively trying to create this AI stack or giving people the tools. Where would you advise a team? So somebody listening to this, where would you advise a team to say, hey, start here and build on it? Like, do you start with an LLM? Do you start with an ancillary tool? Like, where would you suggest somebody to start to try to even replicate some of the things that you're doing today?
Well, I could give you a link to a vibe stack that I recommend that you could share out. But there's a million different ways to kind of peel the onion kind of thing. So I like to be as close to the technology as possible, kind of like the raw format. So that's why my team is in Visual Studio Code. So when they first saw it, they're like, what? Like, because it looks like something from, this is dating me, but something from the movie Hackers or something like that. So like there's like a terminal screen, and it's hard to, but then I show them like it's literally the same thing as the Claude app. The Claude app just looks pretty, like it's just nice, and it has categories and stuff like that. But you can maintain that in Visual Studio Code. So an LLM, certainly, an IDE like Visual Studio Code. It could be Cursor, it could be something else. Are the main things. And then you would have a suite of MCPs, depending on the tool set that you use. You might create some custom ones. So if you're using Google, they have a set. If you're using HubSpot, they have an MCP. Office 365 does. And then there's other tools you might build them for. Like for my marketing team, I built an MCP for our Google Analytics in our Search Console. So Mary Margaret can just say, hey, how have the last 10 blogs been doing on our website? And it'll come back with, all the analytics and stuff. So MCPs are important. And then there might be some specialized tools that either they're mandated by your R&D team or you've picked them out. So I mentioned a couple on the marketing side. Vizard for quickly generating short content video. You would want a tool like Veed, where you can do more manual editing to make something custom. Gamma is a great tool for creating documents. You can connect through an API. We use something called Publer for our social posting. That's a pretty powerful tool. You can also connect to that directly through an API, so you can have Mary Margaret's agents writing their content and pushing it right to the platform. You'll have AI tooling within your CRMs and things like that. So I think it's going to vary from shop to shop, but I would recommend getting very comfortable with getting close to an LLM, getting close to a Visual Studio Code type thing, because that does matter, until they get it to the point where there is a tool that is like that, that is more abstracted. So right now you can talk to Claude and voice and create apps with just talking to it. So that's one layer of it. But it's going to get to the point where you basically take your idea, you drop it into the AI ether, whatever that is, and it'll come back with some options for you. So this is the idea that I have, and you can almost do that right now. It might just be a couple prompts, but it'll come back with, you could use this tool, you could use that tool, you could use whatever. In a year or less, maybe it's just going to do it. It's just going to piece all the things together. It'll be like, oh, here, if you want to do this solution, here's the subscriptions you're going to have to pay, and then you'll be able to do that kind of thing. So I think have someone technical on your team is important, or have access to someone technical. If your team doesn't have a really good grasp on things, a good temperature check is if there's someone on your team that is, if there isn't anyone on your team that can use Visual Studio Code and create a simple app or integrate with your platform or your CRM using Visual Studio Code, that probably means you don't have someone technical enough. So get someone that is that technical, and that'll just accelerate your game massively.
I think there's another topic in here for us to cover. It's like the amount of time that we can invest, and how are we how are we going through and actually creating the space for us to do these things, and etc. So maybe there's another topic in here for us to cover, Chris, if I can suggest in the future. But I realize the time, and as we go to the wrap up, I typically like to ask everybody, everybody likes new, nobody likes different, and doing both at the same time, like AI happening, can either cause friction or uncertainty. So for somebody trying to improve their AI stack, or even the way that they're adopting AI inside their own group, what are 2 or 3 actionable things for you to do, for you to tell them on Monday morning, start with these 2 or 3 things, and that will put you on the path for, I don't want to say AI native or AI fluent, but AI curious? I'm not sure what the right word is.
Well, if you're not already doing this, make sure that you're having fun. Like, that's the number one thing. So everyone on your team is going to be trying to solve a relatively different problem. So make it focused and make it fun. Encourage the team to know that, like, this is, AI is not replacing you. This is not a boring homework assignment. We're going to have fun together, and we're going to be able to do the things that you want to do much more quickly. That's super easy to do, to have fun, and hopefully everyone is already having fun on their team. Number 2, I would have a structured weekly session, at least for a period of time, a couple of quarters, where you're focused with your team on very specific fundamental AI learnings that can apply to everyone. So that would be, setting up your environment with a vibe stack, so that you can use these different AI tools, and then solving a very specific problem that is meaningful to the entire team and paints a picture of, like, gives them an aha moment. But doing that in a group session is great. It saves time because you're all together instead of having 5 different meetings, and it allows people to shoot questions and get comfortable with their level of AI awareness, and making sure that everyone understands it's okay if you're not an AI expert out of the gate. And then maybe have some competitions with your team. Just challenge them to come up with an idea that would move the needle. You probably have a 1-pager for your team, like a high level, this is what we're doing this quarter. And, challenge them to have an impact on that, bring it to that session. Those are 3 pretty easy things to do that don't even require a specific technology. I think the technology choosing is a secondary thing. I'm a huge Claude fan, and that's just where I'm at. But if you like Gemini or some other tool, that's fine too.
I do agree. Pick the one that you like. I also realized, going through and testing a bunch of these different tools, they all do something different, and they're a little bit stronger in certain areas, right? Like a Perplexity, if you want to do deep research, it's a little bit better than some others, or maybe ChatGPT from a idea creation, but Claude is the one, or Anthropic is the one that I seem to be going back to more and more. And then even like Gemini, like their nano banana and image creation is really good, right? So they all do something different, and you have to kind of pick and play around with. I do, like you said, have fun, because if you have fun and you can start to play around with it, and you're genuinely curious about solving something, there's lots of tools out there. But Hey, Chris, this has been a lot of fun. And for those that don't know you, where would you suggest they find you, or if they want to talk to you a little bit more, where would they go?
So I'm on LinkedIn, and yeah, so that's my LinkedIn link. Feel free to reach out. A virtual coffee if you want to do an hour long AI session to crack the code on that. I'm totally open to it. And then if you want to just book right on my calendar, you can go to ex10x.com, and that's where folks usually connect with me when they want to, they have an idea for their team, and they just want to sit down and kind of jam through how they might present that and have an effective launch with AI.
Awesome. Um, I'm I've known you for a long time. I'll say it that way. And it's funny how our relationship has sort of evolved and adapted over the years. And it's you're one where I can ask you a question and you'll always make time for me. And I very much appreciate it, even though our paths have been sort of parallel, but
Yeah.
totally different. And every time we jump in, it's like we jump in and I'm having a conversation with somebody who I just saw last week. And I really appreciate you doing all that and also helping, to shape me a little bit too, because our conversations have been all over the place, but there's typically learnings that happen. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you doing this with me today and talking through it. And I do hope there's another conversation because I think there is one that we need to talk through.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it, Carl. And we'll have to we're getting closer to the Stanley Cup, so there's something to talk about there too. So
There's always hockey to talk about, it seems like. So
yeah,
it's
right on.
but yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Chris, that's going to wrap up another episode of the Revenue Problem Solvers podcast. Obviously, want to thank Chris for sharing these invaluable insights and some strategies you can put into action today. Remember, success leaves clues, and every revenue problem has a solution. Sometimes you just need the right conversation to find it. Until next time, it's Carl with the Revenue Problem Solvers, helping you turn your obstacles into opportunities. Thank you for investing your time with us today. We'll see you in the next episode.